Ladies and gentlemen, sports fans alike, welcome to another edition of Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago, one of the couple, two, three best podcasts around. So sit back, grab yourself a cold one and a Polish sausage, park your keister in the French room, and listen to Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago.
In Chicago, you know that all sports rock. The Bears, Hawks, Bulls, Cubs, and Sox. Pick your favorite, you can choose, as long as the Packers lose. For everything you need to know, it's Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago. Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago.
Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago. This is your host, Sean. On this episode, we have Blackhawks slumping, the Cubs not coming through in Game 1 of the National League Championship Series, and the Bears battling the Lions and the referees. And all this and more on this episode of Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago. But first, we'd like to mention our sponsor, the Rockford Ice Hogs. The season has started for the Rockford Ice Hogs. If you don't know the Ice Hogs or you haven't been there, you need to check it out. icehogs.com. Ice Hogs are the AHL team of the Chicago Blackhawks. So get to see the Stars of Tomorrow today with tickets starting at just $9 and only 90 minutes from the city limits. This is perfect family fun. If you go to a Blackhawks game, sometimes that's going to run you a pretty penny to get your wife and your kids and everybody to a game and maybe have some food. But much cheaper and just as fun to go see the Rockford Ice Hogs at beautiful BMO Harris Bank Center in Rockford, Illinois. Just 90 minutes from the city limits and fun for the whole family. Check out icehogs.com. Tell them Swerski Sports sent you. So with that, I again want to start with our Chicago Bears. I don't know why I want to, but I do. And I had a bunch of things that I wanted to talk about, both good and bad. And I made some notes for myself while I was watching the game. And I even had a guest lined up. I have my friend Corey, who's a diehard Lions fan. I know you're all probably barfing and spitting and scratching your tongue and gouging out your eyes. And who could be a Lions fan? I get it. But he is, and he's my friend, and I look past his flaws. But he had a family emergency and was unable to be on the show. But he will be on next time when the Bears play the Lions in a couple of short weeks, which will be a different result, I promise you. But I had all of these things written out, and I really had an idea of what I wanted to say. But I basically, This is me and what I did when I just saw some of the officiating in the game. I ripped up my notes and said, I can't deal. I need to write a rant about the NFL officiating. The NFL is by far and away the biggest of the major sports in the United States. By far and away. It's not even close. I mean, the popularity of the other three major sports combined still don't hold a candle to the NFL. When you have a playoff game in baseball where it's a series clinching game and it's competing against a really awful Thursday night football game on channels that not everybody has, and you've got a backup quarterback, it's still whooping the crap out of baseball, then you know that the NFL is king. But the problem is that this is not going to last forever. Every good thing comes to an end. We all know that. And the issue is with the NFL is it's going to be its greed and short-sightedness that end it all. And it's starting with things like FanDuel and DraftKings and the such, and they have insider information, and it's going to eventually have to be congressional step in and to regulate gambling. If you start regulating gambling hard, the popularity of football is going to go down. And you're already starting to alienate some of your major fans with this officiating. So if you alienate your diehard fans and your casual gambler, your diehard gamblers are regulated, you are going to start losing popularity, which means you're going to start losing money. I love football, but it's getting to the point with how bad the officiating is this season that other than the Bears, I don't watch any other NFL game. I record a lot of college games and I watch a lot of college games because I've always been probably a little bit more of a college fan, but it started to sway for a while, and it's going backwards. The pendulum is swinging back the other way because of this poor officiating. I'm not even going to talk about just things that went against the Bears, but as a whole in the NFL, the officiating is dreadful and terrible. In that Seattle Lions game, Seattle had they had the issue where the linebacker, there was a fumble in the end zone, and the linebacker from Seattle intentionally knocked the ball through the back of the end zone, thinking it would just be a touchback and they would get the ball at the 20-yard line. Instead, that should have been a penalty, and the Lions should have had the ball. And the most egregious thing about the whole situation is that if you watch the replay, there's a line judge right there, squatted over, eyes open, hands on his knees, focused on watching only this guy bat the ball. There's nothing else to impede his view. He's got the perfect view of this guy batting the ball out, and he just didn't know the rules. It's unbelievable. On the one play where Jay Cutler in this game had the long pass and Alshon caught the ball just a couple yards shy of the end zone, that was clearly a pass interference on Alshon Jeffrey. And to show I'm fair and balanced, that was clearly a pass interference, and it went in the Bears' favor, so I wasn't going to complain about it, but it was a pass interference on Alshon Jeffrey. And he had a couple of them in the game that did get called, but that one didn't. You had the phantom roughing the passer that led to a touchdown for the Lions on Pernell McPhee. He was trying to get out of the way and bumped him in the back of his calf with his arm. That's hardly roughing the passer. Or on the 57-yard touchdown, or the 57-yard pass that got the Lions into the winning field goal range, Willie Young got held really badly, and they didn't call it. And that was the only play. That sometimes you have a whole group of offensive linemen and defensive linemen all pushing back there, and there's a play going on, and there's a running back running out on the flat, and there's a lot of things going on, and it makes it a little bit more difficult to see. I understand the game is fast-paced, and there's a lot of big guys that you got to stay out of the way of, a lot of things you got to look for. But in this game, in that play, there was nothing else to look at other than, did Stafford cross the line of scrimmage when he passed it, which he clearly didn't, and throw the flag on the holding play. There was one guy holding Willie Young. That was all there was to look at. And it's mind-numbing to me. And you add on top of this, the NFL officiating, this is the worst officiating I've ever seen in my whole life, except for those that part of the season when there was the official strike and you had the replacement refs. Those refs were just bad, but everybody knew they were bad. It was kind of a running joke, and you got what you got. But right now, they're just so bad. The officiating is awful. And part of the problem is that NFL officials aren't full-time jobs. They might pay these guys a good, solid wage, but that's not their full-time job. The NFL should make it mandatory that that's your full-time job. You focus on the job. When it's not regular season, when it's off season, you work on your officiating. You work on your craft. I know by trade I'm a chemist and a physicist. That's my schooling. And then I have a degree in pharmacy. And if I don't do those things, I'm very well versed in those things. But if I don't keep doing those things, I'm not as good as I was when I was doing them every day. And as a pharmacist, I'm not doing physics and chemistry every day. And I know if I were to go back and try to do things that I was able to do, and even some of the work I did in the past, I don't know if I'd be able to do it as nearly as well because I haven't done it. I haven't practiced. And that's the thing with officiating, is it's just like anything else, is if you stop doing it for a couple of months and you go back to it, you're not as fresh. Is NFL officials should be working on their craft. They should be required to take classes. They should be meeting during the week. They should be looking at film. Any play where there was controversy, they should be going back and discussing why it was called the way it was, and why other people didn't agree with it. And there should be, like, just like with police, there should be body cams on the referees. They should have some sort of like glasses cam so we can see what they saw. Because if that's going to be part of it too, is cleaning up their mess. Is the NFL backs the officials 100% of the time. They don't go back on the officials. And that's really disheartening because they're telling the rest of us that what we see is an illusion. We have replay. We can go back and see these things. Like when the ball hit the guy's leg, and again in the Bears game in the punt, and they said it didn't happen. I can see it happen. I watched it happen. It happened I saw it. I could go back and I can slow motion it and pinpoint the exact moment. And so when they tell us these things, that's infuriating as a fan, and that's disrespectful. The NFL is basically slapping everybody in the face, from the players on the team that had the bad call against them to the fans that are watching. It's cheapening the game, and they've got enough money, is pay these guys a little bit more and make this be their full-time job. Tell them they can't do other things. If they want to continue whatever there is their trade, like I'm drawing a blank on his name. The referee that's like looks like an old bodybuilder with the big biceps. He's a lawyer when he's not officiating. So during the week he's a lawyer. In the off season he's a lawyer. Tell him, hey, you have to quit your law practice and if you want to be an official. And if he says, well, then fine, I'm not going to quit my lawyer job. And then you say, well, then you're not going to be an NFL official, and you let him go. And you bring in people that's what they want to do, and they want to hone their craft, and they want to be the best at their craft, and they don't want to make bad calls. And when they do make bad calls, there should be repercussions. There should be a system where if you make too many bad calls that they can't justify, then you should be removed as an official. Have pay docked when you make bad calls, these types of things. That's what you do. And in the NFL, when a major a bad call is made, they should just own up to it. I mean, I'm fine losing on a bad call if afterwards they go and, hey, listen, we looked at it later and we made a bad call. Or if there was there wasn't something that was reviewable, or there was no challenges left, or whatever it may be, and it didn't get reviewed. If he went back and said, hey, listen, if we would have gone back and reviewed this would have been overturned, or this would have been upheld, or whatever it was. But admit when you're wrong. I'm totally fine losing on a play if the NFL comes back later and says, we blew that call. It's not going to change the outcome of the game. The game is the game. But as a fan, it makes you feel less crazy, and you just come out the next week and say, listen, or during the week, and you say, listen, this was a bad call. And we as fans know that in our arguments with other people about the game, we know that we were justified in saying that was a bad call and it affected the outcome of the game. And then we go on with our lives. I'm fine with mistakes. Mistakes happen. We're all human beings. We try to do the best we can. We institute things to make the judgment better with instant replay. But the NFL needs to realize that they're not infallible, and there's already enough bad feelings with the NFL when you've got Sheriff Goodell who can't even make a penalty or a punishment stick. Then and then you have them come out and say, well, our officials are perfect, never make a bad call. It's just infuriating, and it's going to eventually come back and bite the NFL in the ass. And that leads me to, sorry, that was a long rant, but it leads me a little bit to the awful rule ever, and it's so stupid why this rule is still in place, is the process. There's been so many plays where a catch has been made, and through some technicality, it's not considered going through with the process, and it's an incomplete. It cost the Lions a game against the Bears several years ago with Calvin Johnson caught a touchdown and then set the ball down when he was standing up, and they said he didn't complete the process. By the spirit of the rule, by the letter of the rule, it's true, and it wasn't a catch. But by the spirit of the rule, it should have been a catch. You look at it, it was clearly a catch. I think the spirit of the rule is that, and I'm fine with the spirit of the rule. So let's define. The letter of the rule is exactly how it's written. So it's like, I'm trying to think of a good example. All right, so there's HIPAA laws. There are healthcare privacy laws. So if you have a 17-year-old child and something happens to them that could be a legal or an issue that the parents should be involved in to help the child in a better situation, get in a better situation, the healthcare system, they can't tell you what happened because it's a violation of the person's privacy. And that's the letter of the law. So the letter of the law is you can't, under any circumstances, tell them information unless somebody's going to be in direct harm because of it. But if you look at the spirit of it, it's they don't want you, if you're a 16, 17-year-old girl that's embarrassed or don't want to tell your parents that you're going on birth control, that's the reason, is they don't want to embarrass you. But it was written whereas there's no situation where you can tell the parents. So that's the difference between spirit and what you try to mean by it when you're writing it, and the actuality, the product that winds up on paper. And so the process, the rule is on paper, is just stupid. It's absolutely stupid. But the spirit of the rule is not bad. You want to make sure that when they catch the ball, they wind up with it, and it's not you don't just cross the end zone and then you can drop the ball or whatever and it still be a touchdown. Is you want to make sure that they complete the catch and go to the ground and still have maintained possession. That's fine with the rule. So how does this affect football? Like I said, Calvin Johnson had that touchdown that would have won the game against the Bears several years ago, and it was a bad call. You had the Dallas Cowboy one in the playoffs last year that cost them a win in the playoffs. It was a bad call. And then you have the one today that they didn't follow the rule of the process, and you have the wide receiver from the Lions catches the ball, doesn't become a runner yet, and in the process of the tackle, gets the ball knocked out, and it's intercepted by the Bears. That's Mike Pereira will back that up, and if you follow the letter of the rule like it's supposed to be, is he didn't complete the process of that catch, and the ball came out, was intercepted. That should not have been a touchdown. That changed the outcome of the game. The Bears lost on that. Plain and simple. And that is just, you can't be the NFL, review that, and still get it wrong. If you don't call it on the field, that's understandable because people are human. This happens fast. You might not have a good angle. These are giant men running fast, bang, bang plays. But when you go back and you watch the film and you can see it from different angles in slow motion and stop it, that was a process ruling, and it should have been an interception, Bears ball on the 20 instead of a touchdown, Lions. And that's all I'm going to say about officiating. I'm just sick from the officiating. I don't care if the Bears lose. It doesn't matter to me right now because this is not a good team, and this is, it just helps the Bears later on in their draft pick. But it's just infuriating that they lose because the NFL doesn't know their own stupid rules that they keep switching around. It's just complete imbecile behavior. So let's actually talk about the game. And I thought the Bears' game plan on offense was really good. The only time I was really upset was in overtime, when they, sorry, not overtime, when there was like 2.5 minutes left and they had that drive that they could have killed it when they were leading and by 7, and they could have just won the game by getting a first down or two. I think if they would have got one first down, they might have been able to run it out the clock. But instead, they ran 3 straight times with Forte up the middle, and the Lions were absolutely waiting for that. And they got a 3-and-out, had to punt the ball, and you have Detroit go down and kick a field goal. And I mean, granted, the Bears went all the way down the field in 21 seconds and to tie it up, but then it went to overtime. But if they would have just run their game plan, thrown those underneath passes, they were stacking the box, you would have had that. You would have been able to throw those underneath passes and keep the clock running and try to get that first down. But other than that, the Bears, I thought, did a great job. They did a lot of short underneath passes, taking what the defense got them, build Jay's confidence in the first couple drives, worked Alshon Jeffrey slowly and to make sure that he was fine, and then he just took over because there was no match for him on the Lions secondary. I mean, you didn't throw to him at all until the second drive of the game. He wasn't even targeted. There was absolutely no penalties on the Bears in the first quarter. That was nice. That's been a big problem for the Bears, is penalties through the season so far. And there was absolutely no penalties in the first quarter, and they played a nice quarter. But for the game as a whole, those penalties started to add up real quick. Let's see, what else? You see where this offense is improving from the week against Seattle, where you had Clausen and no wide receivers, and it was just the worst offense you could have ever had, to Cutler coming back and playing with the backup wide receivers. And you saw the improvement there. I think you were able to put points on the board. You were able to get a win under your belt, and things looked better. And then you see the progression now when you have Eddie Royal back and you have Alshon Jeffrey getting healthier, at least healthy enough to play. And then you have a healthier Jay. Then the offense looks much better. Marty Bennett didn't have a great game today, but Alshon had a good game, and Royal had a good game, and Forte had a good game. And that's what you see, is you're seeing the progression on offense. You're seeing Jay fit in the system, making less mistakes, being asked to force the ball into places less, just taking what the defense will give you and being able to move the ball, scoring enough points where you're keeping your defense off the field and keeping them fresh enough, and then keeping them not wanting to bite your face off, like in the Lovey area, where the Lovey era, where the defense was great and the offense was miserable, and there was a resentment. The offense is good enough to keep the defense off the field, and that's what you need. And they're scoring a few points. All's good in the world. The defense, this wasn't a breakdown of defense like you saw with the Bears defense in the last 2 seasons, where they just look like Swiss cheese. This was solid defense that individuals had bad plays. I mean, they just were outplayed. It wasn't a bad scheme. It wasn't people being out of position. It was just people not being able to make the play because they're not talented enough. I always go back to that game against Green Bay, where the Bears defense, where Jordy Nelson recognized that the Bears were confused and they were in the wrong defense for what the play was, or guys were out of position for what the play call was, and he recognized it, but the Bears players didn't, and the Bears sidelines didn't either, and call a timeout. He signaled to to Aaron Rodgers, who recognized it after he was pointed out to it, and then they just had an easy 72-yard pitch and catch, and you go for a touchdown. There wasn't one of those situations. When you had these long plays, it's just that somebody got beat, and that happens in the NFL. That happens when you're a bad team because you don't have the talent to keep up. On that 57-yard pass from Stafford to Calvin Johnson, it was you had an undrafted rookie safety trying to cover Calvin Johnson. I mean, you have a 5'10", I think he's 5'10", you have a 5'10" safety, and he's trying to cover a 6'6" Pro Bowl wide receiver. That's a mismatch. You want that. If you're the Lions, you want that matchup all day long. So it was what's he gonna do? He's not physically big enough to cover him. On the touchdown after they called the phantom passing or roughing the passer call, and the Lions got the touchdown, you had Porter trying to cover Calvin Johnson, and he had good coverage. You had a middle linebacker that was forcing the ball to be high. I think it was a middle linebacker. I'm sorry. It was a guy jumped. It was either the safety in the middle or a linebacker jumped, and the ball just went over his hand. So he was in good position, and you had Porter who was underneath. So basically that had to be a ball that was very high and out in front that only Calvin Johnson can catch. A 6'4" wide receiver is not going to catch that. 6'3" wide receiver is not going to catch that. You need to be a 6'6" wide receiver to catch that. And Porter is 5. I mean, I've met him in person. I'm 6'1", and I was much taller than he was. They list him, I think, at 5'11". I think he's probably more 5'9", 5'10". And that's a big size difference, especially when you consider wingspan and putting the ball over your head. And Porter had good coverage. The ball was put in a good spot, and he physically is not big enough, tall enough, fast enough to cover Calvin Johnson in that position. And so it's not a breakdown of the defense. You just didn't have the talent to be able to do it. And you didn't have the guys that were able to, up front, to cause enough pressure to create that. Usually when you have a gunslinger like Matt Stafford, what you want to do is try to confuse him and have him throw interceptions. But he was on the ball today. When you have a gunslinger, sometimes he throws those passes that most quarterbacks wouldn't throw into. And that's what you've been seeing with the Bears when they've been doing well, is you get coverage sacks because they're not, especially with Alex Smith, he is a game manager, and he doesn't want to throw the ball into these tight coverages. He's trying to maintain the ball, so he's going to take a coverage sack rather than throw it into a tight spot and risk the interception. Matt Stafford, the guy's an interception machine. He makes Jay Cutler look like a conservative passer. He's ridiculous. So he'll throw it in any spot because he thinks he can throw a football through a 2-inch hole. And it doesn't even fit through a 2-inch hole, but he thinks he can do it. So where the last few weeks you've had players not trying to go against the Bears tight man coverage, and he was, because he's a gunslinger, and it just happened to be they weren't able to get the pressure enough to make him throw bad throws and intercept them, and they didn't have the playmakers on the Bears to cause interceptions or break those plays up. So you end up with a quarterback through overtime throws for 400 yards and 4 touchdowns. That's what you have. This defense doesn't have enough. I said it before, and I'll say it again. This defense is well coached. They just don't have enough talent to be an elite defense. Going back to the offense, on that touchdown that Langford scored on the run, the Bears put a reserve defensive lineman in Mitch Unrain, and they put him in as a fullback, and he goes right in there, and he goes back to the officiating. He got away with a hold there that should have called the play back, but the Bears got a touchdown on Jeremy Langford's run. But that was a nice play call. Everybody was geared up for Matt Forte, and when they saw Matt Forte going wide, the whole defense shifted and expecting Matt Forte to get the ball and him to go behind Kyle Long on the right side. And instead, they gave it to the short man, and and Jeremy Langford, and he made that dive and got the touchdown and made it look easy. That was great. The Bears offense was clicking. They just at the wrong time decided to be super conservative, and that's part of what you get with John Fox is he's not going to take risks. He's not going to go for it on fourth downs. He's not going to go for the touchdown over the field goal. He's not going to go for 2-point conversions unless that's the standard is to go for 2 points in that situation. He's not going to rock the boat. He's very conservative. And when he's always going to expect that to try to run the ball to get the first down. And then if you can't do it, kick the ball away and let your defense win the game. And what happened is that was the one time that the offense wasn't clicking. And I'm not going to throw that on Adam Gase because I believe he got the word from his boss, John Fox, that to run the ball and don't run their regular offense, which is silly because there was nobody on that team that could stop Alshon Jeffrey. And, just run your offense, and they're going to be gearing up to stop the run. Throw short passes. Move the chains. Make the pressure on their defense. Make them have a play to beat you. Don't beat yourself. That was my big problem with the Bears coaching today on far as our offense. I mean, Cutler had that interception in the end zone, and that was bad. And they had some times where they didn't get touchdowns, and they had to go with field goals, and that's not good either. But those are when you have a makeshift offensive line, and you have your best wide receiver coming back from a hamstring injury, and your second best wide receiver coming off an ankle injury, and your quarterback is coming off a bad hamstring injury. It's you're gonna have to take those, and you can't score touchdowns every time over field goals. You have to, but you have to get that ratio be better. Your ratio of touchdowns to field goals when you're in the red zone has to be shifted to more towards touchdowns if you expect to be a team that's going to win, especially a team that is missing a lot of talent on defense, and you're going to have to win some games and saving your defense's butt. That's just the reality of life in this football team. What else? Jay Cutler, other than that interception in the end zone, looked good. He had some nice nimble feet in the pocket. He's still not running like he did. He's not in the beginning of the season before he had that injury. There was sometimes he would take that ball, tuck it, and run it. And he's not really doing that as much, clearly because of that hamstring. But he is being nimble in the pocket, very Ben Roethlisberger like, and he's avoided the sack and come out and made good throws afterwards, which is, Jay's always been athletic enough to get out of the sack and be able to roll out, but it's been his decision making as he's coming out that's been the question mark, and he made good passes today. He avoided a sack on that pass to Alshon Jeffrey to the 5-yard line. That was nice. And like I said, the defense, they wasn't the offense that lost them the game. They put up 30-something points. They marched down the field and got a field goal when the defense gave it up. It was poor officiating, and it was lack of playmakers on defense that was the ultimate difference maker in this game. You even cleaned up your kick return coverage and your punt return coverage, and they were pretty good. You had some turnovers on punts. You never gave up the big kickoff return like you have in several weeks this year. That looked good. It's just you need to be able to add better athletes, faster athletes, bigger playmakers on this defense to turn this team around. And that's where ultimately it is. You have Ego Ferguson's done for the year on injured reserve. He was a starter for you. Jarvis Jenkins has played well. Jeremiah Ratliff still doesn't look like he's recovered from that ankle injury. Eddie Goldman's playing well, so you're able to stop the run, but you're not able to get that pressure to get to the quarterback. And that's where it's the outside linebackers that aren't getting there. You're getting the push up the middle. You're just not getting that from the outside linebackers. Sam Acho looks okay, but he's not good enough to be able to get there and cause more pressure on the quarterback. Adrian Amos at your free safety spot, he looks like a bright spot. He's getting better and better every week. He's making plays. He's hitting hard. He's being physical. One of the knocks on him coming out of college was that he wasn't physical, and that was a little bit. When you see him play now, that doesn't make sense. I mean, my knock on him was that he played cornerback and he played safety, and I didn't know if he was a jack of all trades and a master of none, or if he'd be able to come out and master one position. I thought he had the talent to be a good player. It's just I didn't know if he had it in him to be talented at one position rather than I always thought he was plenty talented to be a reserve guy that could come in and play multiple positions, and I thought that would be a valuable asset in the NFL. My question mark was whether he could be good enough at one position to be a starter, and he's showing me that he can. So he's been a bright spot. Jonathan Anderson, who's filling in the linebackers spot, he played okay. Same thing with Christian Jones. Both of them played okay, and the middle linebacking spots had its ups and downs. I mean, before Shea McClellan got hurt, I thought he was calling a good game, being a good middle linebacker as far as calling the game, but he's had his ups and downs as far as coverage and being out of position and just being blocked out of plays. Christian Jones has been the same thing. I mean, there's been weeks where you just debate whether Christian Jones or Shea McClellan have been worse, but I think they're shoring it up a little bit. I thought Jonathan Anderson had one real interception and one should have been interception, and you had Christian Jones, who was the play caller, and I thought he did an okay job. It's the big issue for the Bears right now is they don't have, they're still one safety short, and they need better help at their cornerbacks, and they need another pass rusher that's going to be able to push the pocket and force the quarterback to throw earlier than he wanted and be able to get pressure on him. Kyle Fuller is, I don't know what else to say about him. He's an enigma. He's clearly a talented guy, and he just makes dumb mistakes out there. There was a touchdown that he allowed where he had good coverage on his guy. The guy makes one minuscule move that wasn't even a good move, goes to the corner, and I don't know if the internal clock in Fuller's head just was like, it's too long, play should be over, and he gave up, or if he just had a mental lapse, but he never turned around, and he just gave up an easy touchdown because he never turned around. If he turned around, he probably intercepts that ball. It's infuriating, but then he'll make a very good play, and he'll have a bad week, a good week. I don't know what to expect out of Kyle Fuller, and I want him to succeed. I like Kyle Fuller. I scouted him really high, and it reflects bad on me if he, in my abilities to scout, if he's a bust. But I don't know what to expect from him anymore. Is they bench him, he doesn't learn. They big plays come up week after week, and he just still isn't consistent. Alan Ball is the same way. Alan Ball's a veteran, and he's just inconsistent, and he gets taken off, and you have Porter covering the team's number one receiver, and you have Alan Ball, who's gets either taken out or put on a lesser wide receiver. But there's just too many try-hard guys that aren't talented enough to be cornerbacks for a press man coverage like Vic Fangio likes to run. In the short term, you're not going to go out and get a stud cornerback this late in the season, but what you can do is you can move Kyle Fuller inside and start and you can start Ball and Porter on the outside, and maybe that takes some pressure off of Kyle Fuller and makes it so he's not as vulnerable and has some help over the middle. And then you also have Sherrick McManus, who I thought would be a bright spot on this team, and he's looked like dog turd tacos. How many plays did he give up a big play because he just couldn't couldn't cover anybody. I mean, regardless of who they had on him, they all looked like Jerry Rice when he was covering him because he's just bad. I mean, he's my prime candidate to be cut from this team and replaced with somebody that's sitting on the street right now or another midseason trade. Book it. Sherrick McManus is going to be the next guy that gets cut, like a healthy cut. And Jones Quarty at the other safety position. I mean, he's just not talented enough to be a starting strong safety in the NFL, at least not yet. And it's hard for me to badmouth him. He's a guy that's just stepping up and doing what's asked of him as best as he can. He's not a high price free agent. He was a undrafted rookie, got kicked around from a couple teams, and the Bears brought him out from the street and shoved him right into the starting strong safety role after Antrel Roll gets hurt. That's a lot to ask from a guy, and I think he's performed admirably considering, but when you ask him to cover Calvin Johnson in overtime in a next score wins moment, you're asking for trouble. He's just not talented enough. You need to upgrade over him. And this isn't a nice guy story league. This is a get the best guy in there to perform. So there's a lot that the Bears need to improve on defense in order to win games. And they're being coached well because this team is significantly better on defense than the last 2 seasons, but they're not good enough because they're still deficient of talent, and that's going to take some time. And that's where Ryan Pace comes in. Is Fangio and Fox are doing their job, is getting this defense to be as best as it can. Now it's up to Ryan Pace to bring talent in so they can do this. And so far so good is he gave him Eddie Goldman and he gave him Adrian Amos, and you have 2 rookie starters in there that are performing well. So big ups to Ryan Pace on that. And one more thing I want to mention about is that the offensive line, considering, has played pretty well. Ziggy Ansah up to this game was the NFL leader in sacks, I believe, and the Bears handled him really well. Charles Leno was a disaster at right tackle, but you move him to left tackle, and suddenly he's serviceable. And then you had Kyle Long, who's really starting to figure out that right tackle position, which is scary. He's only played 5 games at it, and suddenly he's taking guys like Justin Houston and neutralizing them. A guy who's a huge, one of the best pure pass rushers in the NFL, and a guy that's only played 5 games at that position just completely neutralizes them and goes, that was last week. That's boding well. You have Matt Slauson, who's solid. You know what you're going to get with him. And Charles Leno looks like he's much more competent as a left tackle than a right tackle. And you're probably asking, well, why does it matter? A tackle is a tackle. And really, the left tackle and the right tackle spot they're almost like 2 completely different positions under most systems. And left tackle and right tackle call for a different skill set. You want kind of a road grader to be your right tackle, and you're not going to have most of the time you're not going to have your blind spot be there, so you're not going to put your best pass rusher on that side. You're going to put it on the left side, and you want a much more finesse guy who's quicker off the ball, can be a much better pass blocker, run blocking. It's along the way you pick it up, but it's just a different ball game. And Kyle Long is looking like a great right tackle. I don't know how good he'll be at left tackle. I'm sure he'd be fine because he's a very good athlete. But why rock the boat right now and switch him over? Because Charles Leno, we already know, is a bad right tackle. He's not a good run blocker, and he's not going to be able to handle that load. But on the left side, he's being okay. Hronis Grasu had a rough first quarter last week's game, and it looked like it might be a bad fit. But then he comes out and he plays really well today. When you don't call his name and you don't say anything about him, that's good for a rookie center playing his second game ever. So another big ups to Ryan Pace for for drafting Hroniss Grasu. He's clearly going to be your center of the future. Will Montgomery signed a 1-year deal and he's out for the year. Odds are you don't bring him back. You have Hroniss Grasu under a rookie contract, making less money. Smoke him if you got him. So the offensive line, even though it's not the line you expected, it's a line that's performing well. And that you have to give up to the coaching staff, the players, and Ryan Pace for coming through and bringing enough good guys. It fixed it well enough, and it's something that cost Jerry Angelo his job because he couldn't fix the offensive line, and something that the next regime still couldn't fix. So it's nice to see progress. Even though this isn't a good team, it's nice to see actual legitimate progress. So going forward, next week is the bye for the Bears. After next week, you get to the point where you have to poop or get off the pot with Kevin White. You've got from next week, you've got, I believe, 3 weeks after that to make your decision whether or not you put him on your active roster and have him take up a roster spot, or you put him on injured reserve and he's done for the season. So you're getting to the point where you have to make that decision with Kevin White. And I heard Hub Arkush talking about, he's like, well, I'm not an expert on shin splints like I am with ACLs. Listen, I try not to call people out, but Hub Arkush, you're stupid. You're not a doctor. You aren't an orthopedic surgeon. You're a mid-level sports writer that's dragging along your talentless son with you, and you're not an expert on these. You don't know what's happening. There's a wide range of how these things heal and how they progress based on the severity, and you can call them shin splints all you want. They're broken bones, and they take time to hit. You're looking at a wide receiver with broken bones in his legs. That's not good. And then when you finally do heal them, when you have broken bones in your legs, you can't do cardio workouts. If you break your arm, you can still run. If you do things with your upper body, you can still run and keep in shape, which means you're ready to get in game position better because you're in shape, and then you're just waiting for your injury to heal. When you have shin splints, you're resting that. He's going to be out of cardio shape, even if he is healthy. And like I've said numerous times, is the information I have regarding shin splints is that from the American Academy of Orthopedic Surgeons, the orthopedic doctors group. So this is coming from a panel of experts in the field that it's a 4-month process to heal. He had his surgery in August. 4 months from August is December. At that point, what's the point of bringing him back? Is maybe he heals a little sooner than the average person. But that's still in November. Are you going to bring him back in late November around Thanksgiving? I mean, what do you have, 4 games after that? Do you want to bring a guy back and risk any sort of injury, a further permanent injury, for 4 games? You're not going to be in the hunt for a playoff spot. I don't understand the point. Is just scrap him, shelf him for the season, and come back for next year. What else? Again, we have the bye next week, and it would have been nice to have a win going into it and be 500. That's not the way the score goes, and you fall to the Lions in overtime, and you have to lick your wounds for 2 weeks, and then get ready to play the next game. You're basically done for the entire month of October. You're mid-October right now, and you're done for the month. November 1st is your next game, and you play the Minnesota Vikings. And Minnesota Vikings are playing well. So you've got 2 weeks to lick the wounds that you have from a overtime loss to the Lions that you should have won, and go on to face the Vikings. And, you've got, I mean, granted, this isn't a super tough schedule, but there's enough tough games in here that you still have to learn and play better. You've got a improving Vikings team that on November 1st. That's going to be a tough game. Then you're at San Diego Chargers. That's going to be a tough game. Then you're at the Rams. And the Rams are an enigma too, is they're a very talented team, but then they do boneheaded things and lose games. So, but that's still going to be a tough game. Then you have Denver at home, and Denver is undefeated. So you're looking at a really tough team, and Peyton Manning's going to pick you apart. You better be able to get to him. He's not going to dance out of the pocket like other people, but you're going to have to get to him. And then you get Green Bay again. But then you get 2 winnable ones with the 49ers and the Redskins. Then go back to the Vikings, the Buccaneers. You finish the season with the last 2 games at Tampa Bay and at home against the Lions. You're looking at you're a 2-4 team, probably going to lose that. I'm going to give you one of the 2 games against the Vikings. Let's say you win at home, lose on the road. So you're going to win that November 1st game, and you're 3-4. Go to San Diego, you're going to lose. So 3-5. I say you beat the Rams. That's 4-5. You lose to the Broncos. That's 4-6. Lose to the Packers. It's 4-7. Beat the 49ers. 5-7. Beat the Redskins. That's 6-7. Lose to the Vikings. That's 6-8. Beat the Buccaneers in Tampa. That's 7-8. Then you beat the Lions that last game of the season. Then you're 8-8. I think that's pretty fair. Maybe you're 7-9, but you're not going to be much better than that. So the goal for this team shouldn't be trying to make the playoffs and pushing things. It's going to be figuring out who your players are in the future, who can play, who can't, what position, what your real needs are. Can you have Jones Quarty improve enough to be a guy that should be on the team next year? You want to see that. Is he improving every week? Is he learning? Is he getting better? Kyle Fuller, is he improving? Are you going to have to go back and redraft a cornerback? Is Alan Ball good enough to sign for a long-term extension? What about Porter? Is Porter worth bringing to, Tracy Porter worth signing to a long-term deal? I don't know. So you have to figure those things out. Is Sam Acho worth bringing back on another deal? Or do you want to go somewhere else? You're basically trying to win as many games as you can and figure out what you want to do in the future. And that's where you are with the Bears. I know I rambled on a long time about them, so I want to switch gears a little bit, talk about the Cubs, and then after the Cubs, wrap it up by talking about the Blackhawks. So let's move on to Chicago Cubs. Last time we had a show, we were in the same spot as we are now, but just one round later. Last time we talked, the Cardinals had just had a really good game against the Cubs in St. Louis. John Lackey came in pitching like he was Christy Mathewson and nearly got a perfect game against them. And they shut out the Cubs and won 4-0. And it looked bad for the Cubs. And the Cubs weren't doing Cub type things. This is an enigma offense where they have one of the worst batting averages in baseball, and they're right up at the top of the league in number of strikeouts, but yet they're one of the higher scoring teams. And the reason is they work the count. I think they're one of the top teams in baseball for most number of pitches seen per at bat. So, even if pitchers are getting them out, they're averaging like almost 5 pitches a batter. You go through 3 batters, that's in an average inning, that's 15 pitches to get out of an inning. 6 innings, and you're coming towards the, even on an average, assuming they get every single player out, you go 6 innings and you're coming towards the end of your pitch count. You have, let's say you get 1 batter on per inning. So then that's another guy get 5 more pitches. So it's 4 guys. It's 20 pitches per inning if you get 1 guy up on base in a game. And then, so after 5 innings, that's 100 pitches. So you're getting your starting pitcher, the opposing starting pitcher, out early, and you're working the bullpen. And the odds of somebody having a great starting pitcher and great bullpen is not that high. So you end up working the count, and you get, with working the count comes a lot of walks. So you got a lot of guys walking, pitchers going a lot of pitches to get out of innings, which is more pitches to make a mistake. And then you also have pretty much everybody in the lineup has enough pop to put the ball out of the park. Dexter Fowler for a leadoff hitter, has a lot of power. Rizzo, Bryant, Soler, Schwarber, those are just guys that could just, power it out of the park. Javi Baez could power it out of the park. Castro, he's not known for his power, but he's put enough balls in the park, in the benches to be a legitimate threat of hitting a home run. So Miguel Montero doesn't have a ton of home runs, but he's had a lot of timely home runs, and he's got some pop in his bat. So it's every single position, except, they have 8 positions, 1 through 8, that can put the ball in the bleachers. And if you get a couple guys on base through a walk, even if they're not hitting, that's what you do. And they didn't do that in game 1 against the Cardinals. And I said that they went to St. Louis, and St. Louis did St. Louis things to them, and the Cubs didn't do Cub-like things. And I said that had to change if they were going to win the series. And they came back game 2, and you had Kyle Hendricks pitched a great game, kept him in the ball game, and the Cubs did Cub things, and they hit home runs, and they got walks, and they got the pitcher out of the game earlier than he should have. And then you have Jake Arrieta come out, and he pitched a very un-Jake Arrieta-like game, and they still get the win because they just kept pounding the ball and hitting home runs. The Mets don't know what they're in for yet, I think. It's, they had a very similar game. They had Matt Harvey, who came out and looked unhittable, and the Cubs weren't working the count. They didn't take a lot of pitches, and Matt Harvey, who's already very conservative about how many innings he works, how many pitches he throws, and you let him go pretty smooth through the game. At the end, he started leaking oil a little bit, but you didn't take advantage. I look for them. They've got the Mets in game 2 have Noah Syndergaard starting, and he's a really good pitcher, but he's a young pitcher, and I think the Cubs are going to work that count. They're going to make him pitch a lot of pitches, and they're going to knock him out of the game, and they're going to go right to that bullpen of the Mets, and the Mets bullpen is not that good. And that's what the Cubs are going to have to do to win this game. Noah Syndergaard is good, but they've got a guy who, for the second half of the regular season, was basically untouchable, and they're going to get Jake Arrieta. And Jake Arrieta, I know, is going to be fuming after that last game he had. And he's going to come out there and he's going to show those Mets what's up. And the Mets, I don't think, are talented enough to, like, the Cardinals are savvy enough and well coached enough to be able to get some hits off of there. But I don't think there's anybody that's a good enough hitter on the Mets that can consistently get hits and get on base like the Cardinals did. I just don't see it against Arrieta. I look for the Cubs to win tonight, and then it's a whole new ball game going back to Chicago. You have DeGrom and Syndergaard are your 2 best pitchers on the Mets, and you're not going to be able to pitch those guys twice unless you put them on short rest, and they're young guys. So who knows how they respond on short rest? Whereas you have Lester and Arrieta, and you're going to be able to throw them out twice with their normal rest. And you're going to get both of those guys twice. So that's 4 games out of a 7-game series there. And then you're going to have Kyle Hendricks maybe even twice. And then he's been playing really well too. So you only have to have one start where you're going to be questionable what you do. I'm nervous, but I'm optimistic about the Cubs' chances here. And I'm going to come out and say, if you're new to the show, if you guys listen regularly, you know that what this show's about. But if you're new to the show, this is a by the fans for the fans show. I'm not like one of some of those people on sports radio that you might listen to that act like they're gods and everything they say is perfect and their listeners are stupid and don't have a good opinion. This is a by the fans for the fans show. I'm just a fan. I just happen to have a microphone. Anybody that wants to come on the show is more than welcome to. If you want your comment or question on the air, awesome. I will talk about it. If you want to even come on the show, you're more than welcome. Anybody's welcome. It's basically a forum online, a message board that happens to be in a podcast form. And so with that, I had a commenter on YouTube. It's a YouTube listener. And I said, I misquoted what the series against the Cardinals would be. I said it was 2-1-1-1, but it's 2-2-1. So he called me out on it. He was absolutely correct. I made a mistake, and what I did was I printed it off of a website, so I had some notes, and what I printed said the wrong thing, and I didn't double check, and I should have known better because 2-1-1-1 doesn't make any sense. So it was 2-2-1. So it was 2 games St. Louis, 2 games Chicago, then game 5 if necessary in St. Louis. So I was wrong and he was right. I want to say I was wrong. It happens. If you feel I'm wrong, feel free to let me know. It happens on occasion. It happens a lot if you listen to my wife. But the listener also said that he gets way too nervous watching Cubs games as well. So he's like me. It's like I'm going to develop an ulcer sitting and watching these playoffs the closer they get to a World Series. And if they make the World Series, every single pitch, it's going to feel like my heart is jumping out of my chest. It's too much pressure for me. And, my mother-in-law's in town and she was watching the Cubs game last night with me and she was laughing because I hold my breath when the Cubs, I'm fine when they're batting, because if you don't score a run, the same score, but when they're in the field and they're pitching, I just hold my breath with every pitch because it could be a home run and if Cubs pitching is not holding up, then what do they got? It's a scary proposition, but the Cubs need to work the count, and that's what they need to do to win this series. If they go out there and they give easy innings, like Matt Harvey, I think the first 2 innings he had a 7-pitch inning, so he got 3 outs in 7 pitches. When normally that's 1.5 batters for an average for the Cubs, or not even 1.5. That's just over 1. So when you give 1 inning with 7 out or 7 pitches to get 3 outs, and the next inning is 8 or 9, that's not the way to work it. And especially when you're not getting guys on base and you're not hitting the ball, is these pitchers are cruising through innings and they builds up their confidence and they go out there and you already know that if they're pitching well, they're going to hit their spots on the outside. You just need to be able to work the ball. You can't swing at bad pitches, and ones that are on the outside corner, you can't let them have them be called strikes. You got to foul them off. You got to do something because you can't just leave the bat on your shoulder. So the Cubs need to start working that count and be able to capitalize on mistakes of pitching. They don't have any Cy Young winners on this team. So, you have to go out there and work these pitchers and gets a couple guys on bases through a walk. And then guys like Rizzo and Bryant and Schwarber have to step up and put the ball out of the park. Kyle Schwarber did once in the last game and just crushed that ball. It was almost 500 feet. That's what you need to do is instill the fear of God in these people. Is you don't want to pitch to Kyle Schwarber. That's what you want to show them. Is I don't want to pitch just Kyle Schwarber, and I'm scared to get anybody on base ahead of Kyle Schwarber because he's going to put the ball out of the park. And that's what you need to do. You need to work the count, and you need to hit the ball hard and get the you need to get these young hot starters out of the hot shit starters out of the lineup for the Mets. Get them to 100 pitches in the 5th inning, and then you have 6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th inning where you've got their bullpen in, and that's where you can capitalize on them, because those bullpen guys for them, the Mets, aren't that good. And so get their starters out early, work those counts deep, get to full counts, foul a couple pitches off, make him pitch 8 pitches to get you out if he's going to get you out. Don't go popping up the first pitch you see and pop it up on the infield. That's not helping anybody's cause. And that's how the Cubs got here in the first place. That's how they need to continue to win the game. And they're gonna have to ride Jake Arrieta. And I pray we get the Jake Arrieta that we saw against the Dodgers on that national game where he pitched a no-hitter, rather than the one we saw the last against the Cardinals. So we'll see tonight. I'm predicting the Cubs win this one 4-0, and then we go from there back to Chicago. And one more thing I want to mention before we go is we got the Blackhawks. The season started off well against the New York teams, played well against the Rangers, even though they lost, and won 2 games back-to-back against the Islanders. And things started to look up. But then they go two games on the road and get crushed and spanked by the Flyers, and then you go to Washington and get just biatch slapped by Capitals, a Capitals team that was struggling to score any goals, and you just give it up. The thing about the Blackhawks, though, is that they have had a long run of being championship contenders. I mean, 2008, 2009, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. I mean, they're going on almost a decade of being challengers for the Stanley Cup, and they're not rookies to being able to see a slump. And that's what they have right now, is guys look tired, guys look out of position. You've got a lot of new guys that you're trying to work in and figure out who they mesh with. You've got new defensive pairings. You've got guys that have played a lot of hockey over the last couple of years and played really deep into the season. And the hockey offseason is really short when you are hoisting a Stanley Cup. I mean, it's unreal how short that offseason is. And you've got guys that are just coming back and they're played a lot of hockey. They're tired, just physically and emotionally tired. And that's something you have to work through, and you have to rely on your superstars to be able to give you superstar effort, and you need some unlikely heroes to step up, and you're not getting that. So you have Coach Q, who starts mixing up lineups, trying to shake things up. And I had a listener who I tweet with quite a bit, and he's a listener, and he sent me a message on email, and he asked me, would the Blackhawks and Brian Bickle benefit from moving him to the first line with Hossa and Taves? His best season was when he earned his contract. He played with those guys, so why not do it again? Tava will play well with whomever he plays with, so I wonder why they don't try it. And that, you're like a fortune teller. That's what they did. Is you have Coach Q moves Brian Bickle up to the first line with Taves and Hossa, and you figure that's just like handing anybody a gift. Is you put them with Jonathan Taves and Marian Hossa, and everybody's going to play better, except Brian Bickle. I don't know what it is, if it's that vertigo thing or if he was a flash in the pan, but Brian Bickle is not playing well, and they sent him a big wake-up call last year with how many times they healthy scratched him, especially late in the playoffs. They healthy scratched him. You would think that was a big enough wake-up call, and it wasn't. And then they start this season, they put him on waivers, and he cleared waivers. Brian Bickle cleared waivers. So I think the next step is you got to send him down to Rockford. I don't know what else to do. Is let him work out his issues in Rockford where it's not impacting you. You take it improves you twofold. One is you don't have his terrible play on your team right now to screw up one of your lines. I mean, if you put him on your third line, he screws up your third line. You put him up on the first line, he screws up your first line. And God forbid you put him on that fourth line that's actually being productive, is you're going to ruin all that chemistry. He's just not playing well. So you either sit him on the bench at $4 million a year, or you send him down to Rockford because he's already cleared waivers, and you get that $4 million off your books. You have it to be able to do things with if you need to, and you can bring somebody up here that actually has the potential to play well. I mean, if that's Mark McNeil or Brandon Mashinter or whoever from Rockford, is bring him up and let Bickle sort his situation out in Rockford. And if Brian Bickle never recovers and never figures out how to get back to where he was when he got that contract, and then he laments away in Rockford and you never hear from him again. And when his contract's out, he probably, who knows what happens. But if he figures out the whole issue and what's wrong in Rockford, then you bring him back up and life is good again. And you have somebody that'll stabilize in a line and be a physical presence and a scorer up, posting up in front of the goalie. That's what the best case scenario. So I don't know what they're waiting for. You've got to pull the trigger before you sink this team. Is send Bickle down to Rockford. I don't think Will's question was off base by any stretch. You hope that if there was any shot of him playing well, it's gonna be with Jonathan Toews and Marian Hossa. And they gave him that shot, and it was well worth the shot because you still have some time left before you have to re-clear him on waivers before sending him down to Rockford. So you've got the time to figure it out, and they did, and it hasn't worked well. So this team is still struggling to figure out how to play together. They're struggling on finding rhythm. They're struggling just looking tired, and they're figuring things out. I'm not worried about this team. It sucks to watch a bad playing team, but it's they're a really talented team, and they're gonna bounce back. Jonathan Toews and Marian Hossa, they need somebody to be steady on that first line. And it would be nice if they bring up Marco Dano because he got the first crack at it. Let the kid have the chance and let him play it out with that first line. I think that's going to be key is that first line is stabilizing who's the third person on that line, who's going to be the left winger, and let them play and let them get time to figure each other out and develop chemistry. That second line is clicking well with the Russian line with Anisimov, Panarin, and Patrick Kane. That's looking great. Third line's been a mess because Bickle's been on it for a long time. Not a long time, but he's been on it for the longest. Then you move Tavo down to that third line with Hinostroza and Ryan Garbutt. And, Hinostroza's you just brought him up. You don't know what you're going to get out of him. Garbutt played well in the preseason, but he hasn't been playing well lately. So that third line is Tavo and two guys that are question marks. So that third line's kind of a wash. It's nothing. So you've got a first line that can't get into rhythm, second line that's playing great, third line that's disaster, and then the fourth line has been playing great with Andrew Desjardins, Marcus Kruger, and Andrew Shaw. That's a fantastic line. So it's just going to be figuring out who are going to be the guys that you're going to put on the ice, and what you're going to do with Bickle, and which line you want him to ruin, or if you want him to send him to Rockford. And finally is what guys are worthy of sticking on this roster and where you're going to put them, and getting that sorted out, letting them play together, and developing time, because this team is going to be a legitimate Stanley Cup contender. So it just sit back, let them sort the issues out. Don't get too upset about what's happening. And finally, the defense. It's that's been a little bit of a struggle. You've got Duncan Keith and Hjalmarsson playing together, and those are your two best defensemen. But it's weird not having Keith and Seabrook because that's their normal pair. That's your best working pair. And Hjalmarsson, Oduya was a nice working pair. You got to figure out somebody that's going to partner well with Hjalmarsson. Victor Svedberg is 6'8". I could say that about him. I just don't think he's the guy that you need out there. Van Riemsdyk's looked okay. Trevor Daley's looked okay. It's just figuring out who your sixth guy is going to be, and then figuring out what pairings you want to work with, and then getting those guys in sync because, there's been too many fast breaks. There's been too many out of positions, too many sloppy passes. This team as a whole is just not really in sync, and it's just going to take time. And part of that is new guys working together. They want to try to be good teammates. This is not a selfish team, so they want to be good teammates and pass the puck one extra pass too many instead of taking that shot. And that's part of it too, is shoot the puck when you got a shot. Have guys go after the rebounds. Work on crisper passes, which is going to be the timing issue of playing together. And these things are going to work themselves out. I'm not that worried. It just sucks to watch as a fan when they're not playing well. That's going to be about it. I know I promised Bulls talk, and I'm going to, if I have a guest on, because I haven't watched any of the Bulls preseason games so far because there's been Cubs and Blackhawks and Bears and too much going on. But I'm going to catch up on some DVR, and I'm going to try to get a guest on. And I know I always say I'm going to have a guest on, but I got a new job in July. I travel a lot, and I work long hours, and I've got a child that just turned 1 this week, and I come home and I have like parenting duties and husbandly duties and house duties, and and then by the time I remember to contact somebody, it's already like Friday or Saturday, and I'm like, I don't want to email you right now and ask you if you can come on the show Sunday. So I'm really going to send out some emails tonight and see what I can do. So I apologize about that. But thank you guys so much for listening. And if you do like this show, the best you can do is subscribe. Whether you listen on iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, blah, 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 whatever, is subscribe. Give us feedback. Give 5-star ratings. Tell your friends to listen to us. Subscribe on social media. And if you want to have your comment or question answered on the air, our website is swerskisports.com. That's SWERSKI sports.com. Twitter at Swerski Sports, Facebook.com/Swerski Sports. My name is Sean. I am your friend, so you can call me Sean. And thank you guys so much for listening. And until next time, bear down.
Cubs win! What a lucky break! The good Lord wants the Cubs to win!
We thank Ditka and God for all they have provided.
Cubs win! Cubs win! Cubs win!
Oh, I don't want her. You can have her. She's a Packer fan. She can't fit in my van.
And she looks like number New Yorkers. Smoking crack is not legal on planes.
Bears 31 to -7.
The Bears.
Oh, when the Bears go